Hello board game brothers and sisters, I'm Adam Singer and welcome to another episode where I'll be letting you know of all the board games coming to crowdfunding this week. And if you're new to the channel, we do this every week going over all the campaigns, so if you want to stay up to date, this is definitely the place to be. Before I get started, I do like to go over a few new discoveries that I just found out about in the past week. And I do have one to go over, and that's going to be for a new game coming from Sinister Fish Games. And if you're not familiar with them, you've probably heard of their games. They created the game Villagers, and then they added to that series with the game Streets, which kind of iterates on that, bringing it a little bit more into the future. And with this next game, we are going even further into the future because this one is called Moon. And with this one, it's going to follow that same sort of art style and the same weight of gameplay, but this one's going to be more of a drafting game where players are picking and passing and building up their lunar bases. This is going to be a competitive game that also uses aspects of worker placement and engine building. This was just announced, so there's not too much more on the gameplay yet, but it's going to be launching in 72 days, which lands on Tuesday, May the 31st. And that's all I have for updates, so let's check out the Kickstarters. And the first campaign we have launches on March 22nd, and this is called Fire for Light, and this plays 1 to 4 players and takes about 60 to 90 minutes to play. And this is a cooperative, story-driven campaign where players are going to be working through different chapters to complete different objectives, and the game is accompanied with a storybook that's going to provide all the narrative for the game. Each character in this game is going to be asymmetric with their own skills and traits, and then they're each going to come with their own backstory and personality to go along with it. The game plays over a series of chapters, and within each chapter, there's going to be several rounds where the daylight progressively turns into darkness. Players are going to be trying to complete certain objectives in order to win that chapter, but each chapter is also going to have a few different events that can trigger based on the player's decisions. Some of these events causing different challenges, and that could potentially cause a loss of the chapter. For those of you that like a little bit more immersion in your game and that don't like to reset chapters every time you lose, you'll be happy to know that this game does offer a fail forward mechanism. So if you don't want to reset the chapter, you can just fail forward and continue with the way that your decisions panned out. And this game plays over 2 phases. There's the Explore phase and the Environment phase. The Explore phase is where players are going to be moving around the map and performing different actions in order to try and reach their different objectives and win the game. While doing this, players are going to be exploring a modular board with different landscapes, resources, and elevations. And players and enemies will be represented by a queue of cards in order by their initiative. And that's the way that the turn order is going to happen. So you don't really have a player phase and an enemy phase. Instead, it all goes by the initiative, which is outlined on your player cards, and then play is going to go in that order, alternating between the players and the enemies. Your initiative can change depending on the state that you go into or the state that your enemies go into, and you would just flip that card over and it will have a different initiative value that you can sometimes use to your advantage to rearrange the order that players are going to enact their actions. And some of the actions players can take is to move around the map, gather different resources, explore new areas of the map, attack other characters, craft new items, or take character-specific actions that they'll have on their character cards, and these can be upgraded throughout the game. If players do engage in a battle, they're going to be rolling dice to fight, and enemies in this game just have a total health, and you have to do that total amount of damage in a single attack to defeat them, which can make the game a little bit harder, which is not a bad thing, but then it also takes away the need to deal with fiddly damage tokens. Some of the tiles that can be put out can also have some different elevations, which cost more movement points to move in and out of those regions. And it looks like some of the scenarios can have a completely different map design altogether, like this tower here with the multi-level boards where players can move up and down throughout that tower. And something that I think is a really neat aspect of this game is that players are not only going up against these different enemies and trying to complete different objectives and go up against different events, but players are also going to be constantly challenged by the weather, because after the Explore phase, they go into the Environment phase, and this is where players are going to be rolling a number of dice to determine how bad the weather is on the tile that they are currently on. So each tile has a number of snowflake icons, and this is going to indicate how many of those dice you need to roll. Each die has a chance of showing different icons that can add to the amount of exposure your character is going to have to face. And if you ever have more exposure than the number of action cubes you have available for your character, you're going to permanently lose an action cube for the rest of the game. And the action cubes are what you use to perform your actions during the previous phase. But players can try to avoid exposure by creating campfires or having any other special items that will create warmth, because that will allow players to re-roll as many of those dice as they like and try to get a better outcome. But another way that you can tilt the odds in your favor is that you don't have to spend all your action cubes in the Explore phase, because any that you save, you can actually trade in for other benefits in this round. And the rounds are going to continue like this until the chapter is over and players will move into the next chapter. Just keep in mind that any action cubes that you lose are permanent, which makes you have a lower number of action cubes in the future, which makes it easier to roll dice higher than the number of action cubes you have. So it is a bit of a cascading effect where it's going to get harder and harder as the game goes on. So you really want to be cognizant of your action cubes and the weather that you are encountering. And launching on March 22nd, we have Jurassic World: The Legacy of Isla Nublar. And this plays 1 to 4 players and takes about 90 to 150 minutes to play. And this is a cooperative legacy game where players are going to be playing with asymmetric characters, each with their own special abilities. And they're going to be completing a series of adventures, controlling dinosaurs, dealing with certain events, and trying to build and expand their dinosaur theme park. Players are going to be trying to complete these different objectives within 5 rounds in order to win the game. And the way that this game works is that you're setting up this main island board, and the 5 rounds are going to be represented by these 5 round cards at the bottom of the board. And each round you're going to flip one of those cards up, and it's going to have a bit of instructions for the players to follow in order to set up that round. There's going to be different events that occur and different dinosaurs that might show up. The board's made up of 20 different squares broken up into 6 different sectors, and each sector is going to have a card associated with it. And these cards are found at the bottom of the board as well, and they are flipped face down until a player moves into that area, or if it gets flipped up for some other in-game event. And that's going to reveal the type of dinosaurs that are there and the way that dinosaurs are going to behave on the dinosaur phase. And those cards will also dictate the number of items that you can discover there. And once the round's set up, players take turns performing actions, and some of the actions players can take is to move 2 spaces or move a single space with people or animals. And players can also move into different buildings if they discover a building on the map, and that will actually move you onto a separate building board associated with that building. Players can move into a space with a carnivore, but that is a risky move, and players will have to roll a die to see if that carnivore attacks. But players can also herd dinosaurs to move them into different spaces, search the spaces to find items, rest to gain health, or trade with other characters, or perform special actions associated with their character, the building they're in, or different item cards that they might have in their possession. And after all the players have performed their actions, we move into the dinosaur action phase, where each of the discovered regions are going to get activated in order, and those cards are going to dictate the way that the dinosaurs behave in those regions. And these might cause those dinosaurs to move a certain direction or attack the nearest prey, and the prey doesn't necessarily mean a character. Dinosaurs can attack each other, even other carnivores. But if you do get attacked by a dinosaur, you're going to be rolling the number of dice that is associated with that dinosaur. Obviously, the stronger dinosaurs will roll more dice, which in turn allows them to potentially deal more damage. Players can defend themselves with different actions and by using defense cards, but beyond that, players are going to take injuries, and players can only have 2 injuries. And if you already have 2 injuries and you get damaged after that, you're going to be flipping these consequence tokens up at the top, and if there's ever 5 or more consequence tokens flipped, then players are going to lose the game. And the game continues like this, with flipping the next round card, which is going to change the state of the game. Players performing their actions, then the dinosaurs performing their actions. And if the players are able to complete the objectives before the 5 rounds, then they win the game. I'm usually really skeptical when it comes to IP-based board games, but this one actually looks really interesting. It's not too complicated, but with enough moving parts to keep things interesting. And it does look like a solid design and a lot of fun. So if you're a fan of the IP, or if the game just looks like an interesting puzzle, this is definitely one to check out, and I have links to all these campaigns in the description below. Also launching on March 22nd, we have Kingdoms Rise and Fall Dorian, and this plays 3 to 6 players and can take an hour or more to play. And this is a strategic deck building card combat game where players are going to be moving around a board, engaging in different sieges and battles, and they're going to be issuing cards out as they try to defeat their opponents. This is also a game that I've covered in the past, but its campaign got pushed forward to this week, so I will roll that footage for you now. And in this game, the king has died, and players are rebel leaders competing for his throne. Players are going to be traveling the map, gaining different resources, and fighting to gain influence. And the first player to reach a set number of influence points wins the game. Players are going to be choosing a character and their starting deck, and then they're going to be developing that throughout the game. In each round, players are going to be gaining resources based on the locations that they hold, and then they're going to be drawing a kingdom event card, which is going to have game-changing effects that affect all players. And each round is made up of 2 phases. There's the preparation phase and the influence phase. During the preparation phase, players are going to draw a card from their own personal deck, and then they're going to take turn performing different actions like gaining resources, using camp upgrades, upgrading their character, buying new battle cards, or burning unwanted battle cards from their deck, or gaining new objectives which can help them gain more influence points. And then during the influence phase, players will also draw a card from their personal deck, and then they can perform some different actions like traveling across the map, visiting the different locations, using your character abilities that you upgraded in the previous phase, upgrading your camp, gaining resources, and engaging in battles. And your deck of cards represents your army, and when you enter a battle, you'll be able to choose from your hand of cards to decide which cards you want to send into that battle. And there's two different classifications of battles. There's siege battles and field battles, and the thing that determines this is how that battle was triggered. If it was triggered by occupying a location, then it's going to be a siege battle, but if it was triggered by characters interacting with each other on the map, then it's going to be a field battle. And the battles play out almost the same way, but the only difference is that siege battles thematically take longer to resolve, so players can send troops from farther distances if they want to engage in that battle. And then of course the field battles thematically occur more quickly, so only troops that are close by to that battle can actually engage in it. And to resolve a battle, there's going to be a defending side and an attacking side. Sometimes it might be obvious which side you are depending on if you own the location that's being fought over or if you are the one attacking it. But any other players can also join in these battles, and they can secretly choose a side, and then players are going to be choosing cards that they want to play, simultaneously revealing those cards and then determining which side has the most power. Players will gain various rewards if they're able to win, but players can also gain and lose control of different regions. And this is a style of combat that I really enjoy. A game that I could compare it to is Cosmic Encounter, but what makes this game really interesting is that it blends all that with a deck building mechanism. And if that sounds like a blend that you're interested in, definitely check it out in the description below. Also launching on the 22nd, we have Tidal Blade's Rise of the Unfolders, and this plays 1 to 4 players and takes 60 to 120 minutes to play, and this is the standalone continuation of the series Tidal Blades, and this is also one that I did cover in the past, and I go into a lot of detail there, so I will go ahead and roll that footage for you now. And you may have already heard of their previous game, which was Tidal Blade's Heroes of the Reef, and this is actually a complete standalone game that plays completely different than that original game. The original was a worker placement with dice rolling and upgrading, and in that game players were competing to become a Tidal Blade, which is a sort of knight or warrior that exists in this universe. This new game does have the same designers, so if you're a fan of the work, you can be happy to see that they are continuing to expand this series, and it will also have the same artist as well, so you can expect that same amazing artwork. And this game, like I said, will be completely different than the original, but it will also feature the same original characters, and while in the original game you were trying to become Tidal Blades, in this game you have become Tidal Blades and you're actually going out and using everything that you've learned and your knowledge and actually trying to protect your home. And you're going to be doing this over an 18 scenario dungeon crawling campaign that is highly focused on deck building. And there are a few other really interesting design choices that I think are worth mentioning here. The first is that the game will be using a booklet in order to present the map, but this is actually taken to the next level because you're actually going to have 2 booklets that fit together so that the seams are out on the outsides of the board and they won't get in the way as you're moving your miniatures or different resources across the map. And another really interesting aspect of the map that I think is going to be really fun is that it's actually broke up into 9 different sections, and depending on which section you're in, you're going to gain some benefits for being there. These abilities will be there by default, but players will also have a board outlining these different regions, and you can put cards onto your board in order to augment or change the abilities that are active there. The caveat here is that if you ever fill a column or row on your board, it's going to get wiped clean and then get reset back to that original ability, but players will be able to upgrade that again. And I really like these new ideas here and the innovations that they bring to the board game design space, and I expect that we probably will see more of this type of work done in the future. And another thing I really like to see is designers doing something completely different than what they've done in the past and still doing a great job of it. And it looks like these designers have managed to accomplish that. So for that reason, this one is also my pick of the week. And players will be all starting with the same boards in order to track this as well as their stats, but the real differences come with the characters and the cards that you're going to be adding to your deck throughout the game. Players will be able to add and remove cards from their deck throughout the game to really customize what sort of character that they want to be. So players might want to specialize in certain areas so that they are more powerful as a team. But your deck can get bogged down each time you take damage or if you push yourself too hard because you'll be putting wounds into your deck throughout the game, and these will essentially clog up your deck and make your other cards more difficult to reach. And whenever a battle takes place, both the monsters and the characters will be playing in order of their initiative, and players will be playing cards from their hand onto their board in order to set their initiative before battle. Those cards will also be used in combat to mitigate your rolling because this combat is resolved through dice rolling. And if you don't always win, you don't have to be too worried about it because the game does allow you to fail forward if you want that more immersive experience. But one of the abilities that Tidal Blades do have is the ability to rewind time. So you can actually restart a battle as much as you want and try to do a better job to better prepare yourself for the future of the campaign. So this is a game that does a great job of allowing players to restart from different checkpoints, both from a design standpoint, but also justifies it thematically. And if you want a more free-form exploration of the world that Tidal Blades has to offer, this campaign is also going to be offering a campaign sourcebook for the brand new Tidal Blades RPG. So this campaign's already adding a couple really exciting additions to the Tidal Blades series. So if you're interested in this one, definitely check it out, and I have links in the description below. Also launching on March 22nd, we have a campaign that's not for a board game, but for an RPG as well as some sharp-edged dice. And this is coming from 1985 Games that has created previous games like Dungeon Craft and Deck of Stories, but this campaign is going to be offering a brand new RPG that's going to take retro gaming back to the future. And the campaign's also going to be offering some really nice sharp-edged dice made of resin with a reflective foil, and these will all be packaged within a cassette tape type box, which really sells that retro theme. So if you're a fan of role-playing games and a retro feel, this is definitely one to check out, and I'll have links in the description below. Launching on March 22nd, we have Mercurial, and this plays 1 to 4 players and takes about 45 to 60 minutes to play. And this is a game where players are different spellcasters trying to manipulate the elements to craft different spells, and then cast those spells in order to perform heroic feats. And players will be starting the game each with their own unique class represented by a player board, and this is going to come with some unique abilities as well as different starting resources. And players will be trying to gain different crystals and mana and manipulate different elemental dice in order to forge different spells in order to cast them. And there's 6 types of elements that players will be trying to take advantage of. There's the fire, water, lightning, earth, ether, and the void. And the way that this game works is that players are going to be taking turns drafting skill cards into their hands, and these skill cards are going to allow those players to manipulate their dice in different ways. And the reason players want to do that is because you need certain combinations of dice to complete different spells, and you need the certain spells to complete different feats. On a player's turn, they have 2 options to choose from. They can take the take and play action in either order, or they can take the cast action, where they're going to be casting a series of their spell cards in order to try and complete a feat, which will earn them victory points as well as some additional resources. But if a player has taken the take action, this actually has a few sub options within it. They can either take a skill card from the central row, which is accessible to all players, and the leftmost card in that row is going to be for free. Whereas if a player decides to take any other card, they just have to put a resource on that leftmost card, which makes it more and more valuable each time it is not taken. And the skill cards are the primary way that players are going to be manipulating their dice. Each one is multi-use. It's going to come with a primary action that's going to be more powerful, but also more specific to a particular use case, making it a little bit more difficult to use. While the secondary action is a little less powerful, it is more simple and flexible to use. But instead of taking a skill card, players can also take a spell card, and this is the reason players are manipulating their dice, because they're trying to fulfill the requirements of these cards, because if you are able to do that between your dice and other resources, you'll unlock the power of that card. Completing the different spell cards allows you to combine them and add their different benefits together in order to fulfill the requirements of those heroic cards. One thing to note about the skill cards is that when you use them, they do get exhausted. So on the take action, instead of taking a new skill card or a spell card, you can also choose to take all your exhausted skill cards back into your hand. And then to actually use those skill cards, you're going to be using that play action. And that allows you to use either the primary or secondary ability of one of your skill cards in order to manipulate your dice, exhausting that card until you choose to take all your exhausted cards back into your hand. And this is a great picture here because it kind of shows the entire life cycle of the game with the different cards and the elemental dice, because you have your skill cards here that you're going to be collecting throughout the game in order to manipulate your different elements on the dice, in order to fulfill the requirements of your spells, in order to gain the powers that that spell offers to work towards fulfilling the requirements of these different feat cards. And now that you fully understand the way that this game plays, I think it's a good time to mention that this one is also my personal pick of the week. And there are a lot of reasons why I'm picking this one. The first one is that I think the game just looks like a lot of fun. I think there's going to be a lot of great decision points here. I think it looks really quick and easy to get out and play, and it also has a simple enough rule set that I think it's a really quick teach. Even though it offers a simple rule set, there are a lot of nuances with the game with the multi-use cards, as well as some spell cards that do offer different options. Set collection is actually one of my least favorite elements in a game because it always feels a little bit luck-driven to me, where you're trying to collect a set and you're just kind of hoping that no one else is going for that set, and that you are able to find more of that set as you dig through different decks or tiles depending on the game. And this game does have set collection in a way where you're collecting different spell cards to complete different heroic feats, and then you're also trying to collect different dice by manipulating them in order to fulfill those spell cards. But I think this game does set collection in the proper way where it gives you a lot of options, so I think even if the set you're going for gets taken, you'll be able to roll with those punches and just divert your efforts to somewhere else without feeling like all those efforts were just taken away from you because someone else just happened to get there first. The multi-use cards are giving the players a lot of options, and you have a lot of control over the cards that you take. And then some of the spell cards can also manipulate the way that the spell cards are resolved, so you can actually line yourself up for multiple heroic feats at a time, so if one does get taken, you do have another to fall back on. So I think this game does offer a really solid design where it's going to strike that balance between just the right amount of randomness between the dice rolling and the cards that get drawn, but then give the players enough control to mitigate their dice rolls and choose the types of cards they want to involve in their play. And each one of us does have our own preferences of how much strategy versus how much randomness we like to see in a game. I think most of us do land somewhere in the middle where we want to feel like we can improve and get better at a game, but that if we've played it more than someone else, we don't feel like we're just going to destroy them and they have no chance. But of course, a board game is not completely about the game itself, but also about the entire experience that it gives. And part of that experience is the visual design, and the artwork and graphic design in this game, I think, is one of the best. I really like the way that these cards look. There's so much detail and intricacy in the way that they're designed, but then the important bits of the card really pop and are easy to see, so I don't feel like the artwork is diminishing the gameplay in any way. And this being my pick of the week isn't all about the gameplay or the graphic design, although I think both of those look really solid, but it's also about the designer's history and my experience with their previous campaigns and what I've seen out in the community. Something that's really cool about this designer and his previous campaigns is that he does a lot of the work himself. His previous game, Endogenesis, is really solid. The competitive version of the game does offer a little bit more chaos and take that, but then if you play the cooperative version of the game, it almost completely flips the game on its head because you're actually going to be helping the other players and trying to let the other players get the kill instead of you in order to try and make sure that you're all improving together, because this game can be very difficult. So if you did play this game in the cooperative or competitive mode and you found that it wasn't for you, I recommend playing it in the other mode because it does completely change the way that the game feels. Not only that, but David also does most of the artwork for these games, and I'd love to see him doing artwork for even more games, even ones that he doesn't design, because he has a really unique art style, and Endogenesis is one of the best looking games I have in my collection, and this is coming from an indie designer. Not only does his artwork look phenomenal, but he also puts a lot of effort into the usability and the structure of the cards to best present the gameplay information to make the game as easy and intuitive to play as possible, and he's really active in the forums and community to really dial these things in, get feedback, and get things right. And it's really too bad that I don't see too many ratings under the ratings tab, because I know that he is playtesting this rigorously and he has been playtesting it for a long time. And he even offered a playtesting rewards program where you could get different rewards for playtesting his game. Playtesting is probably the most important thing when designing a game, so showing your appreciation for their efforts through a little rewards program like this and getting more people excited about trying your game is an amazing idea, and I wish I thought about it. But one thing I would recommend is for the people that are playtesting your game, I'd also ask them just to leave a review under the ratings and comments section on BGG, because a lot of people will go here to see what other people thought about your game. And if you are doing all this playtesting and effort, and from what I'm seeing, this game looks really solid, so I would expect there to be a ton of positive reviews here. And there's one more thing I want to mention here, and it's something that I have mentioned in the past, and it's something I want to see from a lot more publishers in the future, and that's the concept of financial accessibility. And what I mean by that is that you really want to offer a pledge level in your campaign that makes your game accessible for people who just want to experience your game. That means not paywalling people with deluxeified components or additional expansions, or just making your game ridiculously expensive just because you have some exclusive content thrown in there. And David's previous campaigns, as well as this one, will offer a very reasonable entry point, as well as options to deluxeify and upgrade your game if you are interested to do so. And if you want me to just sum up everything I think about his previous campaigns and what I'm seeing from this one, I think that David Go just runs some of the best campaigns I've ever seen on Kickstarter. He really seems to care about his backers, put a lot of thought into the decisions he's making around his campaign, and he really does seem to care about giving you reasonable options that respect your wallet. And something that really impressed me with his second Endogenesis campaign, where he introduced a new expansion, is that not only did he design a new expansion, but he actually continued to playtest the core version of the game, and he completely rebalanced the deck and wrote a completely new rulebook so that anyone jumping in on this campaign could actually get an even better version of that game, which he completely did not need to do. Basically, any game at any moment can be improved. There's no perfect game. There's always things you can streamline and find better ways to do things. And Endogenesis, as it was, completely fit that bill. It was perfectly fine the way it was, but he continued to balance it and find little improvements here and there to make that player's experience even better. And for me as a previous backer, I was fully expecting this to cost me a ton more money if I wanted to replace those cards with the newer ones, because that's what I've experienced with other publishers and other campaigns, but this was actually included in the upgrade pack completely for free. So when I see all this, it really gives me that impression that David did all this out of a passion for the game and providing his best possible product to his backers, while also understanding how to deliver those changes to existing backers without a huge financial burden on them. Because often in these situations, backers are faced with two decisions, both which are less than ideal, and that's that you get the new upgrades and changes, but at a cost, which makes you feel like you're kind of paying for those cards twice, or you stick with the cards that you have knowing that there has been improvements that you're missing out on, which either way you go, you're kind of disappointed that you're missing out or that you had to pay extra for something that you've already paid for. And I'm just really impressed that as an indie publisher, David was able to recognize that and then avoid putting backers in either of those positions. So really amazing work here all around, and I'm really glad to see that this game looks like it has a really solid design as well, because this is the kind of behavior I like to see from our publishers and designers, and this is the kind of stuff I like to support, and I really want to see this one succeed. So if this one interests you, definitely check it out, give it a shot, and see what you think, and don't forget to hit that notify me on launch button, which you can find in the description below. Also launching on March 22nd, we have Terraforming Mars, the Ares Expedition expansion bundle. And this is going to be coming with 3 different expansions for Terraforming Mars Ares Expedition. And if you're not familiar with Ares Expedition, this is a simplified version of Terraforming Mars, which is going to have a more simplified, smaller board. And it's going to have a little bit more focus on the card play and play in a shorter play time. And if you're not familiar with Terraforming Mars, this is also a card game, but it has a lot of different moving parts in it. You're going to have a board where you're trying to make Mars a habitable planet. You're going to be building different cities, forests, and oceans. And a big part of this is by purchasing and playing different cards so that you build up an engine that's going to grow rapidly throughout the game for you to convert resources into other resources to generate things like heat, oxygen, and raise the livability of Mars in general. And one thing to note here is that the original Terraforming Mars game is ranked number 4 of all time on BoardGameGeek right now, so a lot of people do prefer the original Terraforming Mars game to Ares Expedition, while a lot of other people do feel like it does offer a different type of game, where if you want the Terraforming Mars experience but you don't want such a long involved game, this is offering a great option for it. But it is always hard to stand up to one of the greatest games of all time. But one thing I do like about the simplified version of Terraforming Mars is that it does offer a lot of opportunity for expansion. Since you are starting with a more simple game, it gives you some more room to add complexity. And this campaign is going to be doing that with 3 new modules that players can add to their game. The first one is the Discovery expansion, which is going to add some different ways for players to score victory points. There's awards, which open up the door for some more endgame scoring, and then there's milestones, which allow players to gain some victory points throughout the game. This one's also going to add a little bit more to the game itself, like some upgraded phase cards and wild tags introduced to the game, which I think is a great idea because it'll also speed up the game a little bit, since searching for the different tags that you need will be a little bit faster when you have wild tags as an option. The second expansion is the Foundations expansion. This one's a little bit more straightforward, as it's primarily adding some new material so that the game can be played with up to 6 players, but it's also going to be adding a little bit more to the game as well, because there's going to be a new score track added for infrastructure, which is a new terraforming metric that players can pursue, and there will even be some new project cards that will incorporate this new metric into the game. And the final expansion is the one that I think is the most interesting, and it's called the Crisis expansion. And this is going to add cooperative play to the game, where Mars has been terraformed, but players are faced with a natural disaster, and you're going to have to keep Mars habitable by achieving different objectives that players are going to work together to pursue. In this mode, the gameplay is mostly the same, but every round there's a new crisis card that's going to get drawn, and that's going to introduce a different event that players are going to have to deal with. And if they are unable to resolve that before the following round, that's going to negatively affect their terraforming metrics. If that happens, Mars will become less and less habitable, and falling below a certain threshold will lose you the game. So if you are looking for even more terraforming Mars, I'll have links to this campaign in the description below. Also, on March 22nd, we have the next iteration of the Okko Chronicles series, and this is a series of board games that follows the comic book series of Okko Chronicles, each board game kind of focusing on a different chapter, and I think for the most part these have been happening in chronological order to the comics. I'm not too familiar with the comics, but if you are a fan of the series, this is definitely one to check out, and I know even if you are not a fan of the series, this is a game that has been getting a lot of praise, especially the previous one, which this one shares a lot of similarities with. So if you are a fan of that one and you want to continue the story and also get some fresh new design mechanisms, this is definitely one to check out. And this one plays 1 to 5 players and takes about 60 to 90 minutes to play. And the previous game was a one versus many dungeon crawl type game that offered a series of different scenarios where players would either take on the role of the Okko and his allies or be playing as the evil Oni. And the good players would be traveling through the Palace of Mist, trying to uncover the conspiracy surrounding the world that the narrative is based on, and defeat the demonic Oni who the other player is playing as, while the other player would play as the Oni as well as the different minions under his control. And each scenario is played over a series of rounds, each with 3 phases, where players are going to be manipulating the different cards in their hand. So the first phase, you're going to be planning out your actions. You're going to be choosing 2 cards to put face down on either side of your player board. One card is going to represent the ability that you have for that round, while the other card is going to augment some of your stats for the entire round. So depending on what you think you're trying to do and what you think your opponent's trying to do, you might want to augment certain stats depending on the situation that you're currently in. After all players have done this, we move into the action phase where players will be able to perform 3 actions each, where they can either move, attack, use a special ability, or manage their equipment cards. And then finally there's the third phase, which is a bit of a cleanup phase to reset certain aspects of the board. The Oni player does play very similar to this as well, but they're also going to be building up a sort of skill tree that's going to upgrade the different minions that they have as well as the Oni themselves. And this new version of the game is going to play very similar to that, but it's going to be following a different arc in the story, which is going to be focused on the Ronin and his fellow travelers. And then it's going to have scenarios where the players are taking refuge in different strongholds scattered throughout the mountains, and it is more of a defensive game where you are going to be getting attacked by hordes and hordes of the enemy, and the players are going to be trying to hold their ground and fend off the invading armies. So this game will still share a lot of the gameplay elements of the previous game, but it does put you in a little bit different of a situation. Not only that, but this one will also offer a full cooperative mode where the enemy will be run with an AI deck, so that if players don't want to have that one versus many experience, they'd rather all play on the same team, this one will be offering an option for that. And in this mode, players will lose the game if all their characters are put out of action or when one of the fortress walls is fully destroyed. Just like in the previous game, players are trying to fulfill certain objectives in order to win the game, and if they are able to do that first, then you win the game. And launching on March 23rd, we have Casting Shadows, and this is coming from the game publisher Unstable Games, which created the hugely popular game Unstable Unicorns, as well as the game Here to Slay. Unfortunately, I don't have too much more to say about this one. The publishers are keeping this one a little bit on the DL and want it to be a bit of a surprise. So if you want to know more about it, I do have links to the notification page, which you can check out in the description below. And if you do sign up in advance and it does turn out to be a campaign you're interested in, you will get a $5 credit put towards your pledge. So if you are interested to know more about this one, definitely go check out that sign up page and get that discount. And launching on March 24th, we have Encyclopedia, and this plays 1 to 4 players and takes about 60 to 120 minutes to play. And this is going to offer you a classic Euro-style game, but with a more contemporary art style. In this game, players are disciples of Charles Darwin, and players are competing to create the first encyclopedia. This is going to take advantage of dice-based worker placement, and players are going to be trying to raise funds, conduct research, organize expeditions to discover different animals, and publish studies that they are able to pull together for these animals. Doing all these things, as well as collecting different sets of cards and tokens, will gain you victory points and potentially win you the game. And this one's coming from the same designers that created the games Museum and Dominations, which both get a lot of positivity around them. So it's no surprise to me that this one is also our Discord pick of the week. And this game is going to be playing over a series of rounds where players are going to be drawing and rolling dice and then placing them out on their player board. These dice can then be used to perform different actions each turn depending on their color and value. So this board is going to offer you all sorts of different options, just like your classic worker placement game, but then there is a layer on top of it that kind of intertwines different elements and components of the game and board based on a specific value or a specific color. Depending on the way that you're playing the game and the different objectives that you're trying to achieve, you're going to be trying to get different combinations of those different elements. Some of the action spaces will gain you different cards for different special bonuses that you can use throughout the game or scoring opportunities, or they could also gain you an animal card. And animal cards are used for research. You're going to take that into your player area, and then you can spend different costs to discover different attributes of that animal. And of course, these animals all come in different colors, so depending on what you're trying to pursue, some pairs of animals will work better for you than others, and you're going to be trying to create those different combos to maximize your points. Sometimes the dice you roll are not exactly the color or value that you need in order to get the cards or actions that you want, but fortunately enough, you can actually take dice from other people as well. Since everyone rolled their dice and put them on their player card, when it is your turn, you can either use one of those dice or you can pay a cost to use an opponent's die. Of course, this will be happening across the table, so people can take your dice as well, but you will be compensated for that. And before you feel like this is putting too much take that into the game, I would argue that it doesn't really add much or any take that at all, because this is a similar concept where in a lot of Euro games, the space you take can't be taken by any other player, but instead of this being space dependent, it's more die dependent. So it's kind of just shifting that aspect that you see in a lot of Euro games into a different spot in the design. I think that's a really interesting design choice that will make this Euro game feel a lot different from a lot of others out on the market. As players perform their actions, they're going to be gaining different resources like money and tokens of different colors, and players can gain victory points for completing research, logging research, any remaining money that they have at the end of the game, and collecting sets of different colored tokens and cards. And the player with the most victory points at the end of the game wins. And those are all the campaigns we have this week, but don't leave yet because we have a few awesome pledge giveaways to announce. These are the easiest giveaways to enter on YouTube ever. All you have to do is leave a comment. You don't have to sign up to anything. You don't have to like or subscribe, although I do appreciate those things if you do like this content. But the first giveaway we have is for Hamlet, and this is a competitive village builder game. And in this game, players are going to be placing different tiles on their turn in order to create different workflows, in order to produce different resources to create goods. A neat aspect of this game is, unlike a lot of other tile placements that use a lot of squares or hexes, this one actually has quite a variety of the different types of tiles you can find, which is going to make your Hamlet a little bit more organic and a little bit different from game to game, which I think adds a bit of charm. The artwork in this one is also incredible, and another aspect of this game that I think makes it a lot different from other city builders is that players are actually all contributing to the same Hamlet. So depending on the tiles that your opponent player puts down, it will dictate the sort of opportunities that you have available on your turn. Since each of the tiles can produce different resources and chain together in different ways, you're really going to want to pay attention to what's going on in that main board. And players will be putting out their workers to take advantage of these different opportunities and creating different production workflows to turn those resources into items. Players can gain victory points by using donkeys to deliver these items to different areas of the board, and players can also contribute to the main church at the center of the board, which will also contribute to their overall victory points. And this giveaway is going to be for the Founders Deluxe Pledge, which gets you a Kickstarter version of the game, as well as all unlocked stretch goals. And under this giveaway, just leave a comment down below with the hashtag Hamlet, and let me know the role that you would play or the goods that you would produce if you lived in a little self-sustaining Hamlet. For myself, I don't think there'd be quite as many board games being launched every week inside this little Hamlet, so I could probably have a lot more free time while still doing these videos. And I'd be perfectly happy harnessing my carpentry skills to build all sorts of cool stuff, especially board game tables, or maybe as a gardener growing some awesome snacks for board game nights. And the next pledge giveaway we have is for Library Labyrinth, and this is a cooperative game where players are trying to work together to restore order to a library. Because in this library, some hideous and terrible monsters have escaped from their stories, and it's up to the players to gather different sets of skills in order to send those monsters back to where they came and put those books back on the shelf where they belong. In order to do this, players will need the help from different historical or fictional characters from other books, and players will be working together to combine the skill sets of those characters in order to send these monsters back. And this game is designed by female designers, and they did choose to have more of a focus on female characters in the game, which I know a lot of us can correlate with different social movements, which a lot of us have varying opinions on, and I know there are arguments to both sides. And whenever there's a game that's all female or all male or all something, there usually is some arguments that arise. But the way that I look at it is board games are a creative space, and I'm happy to see people executing on their creative freedom however they want to do that and whatever they are excited or passionate about. As long as the intent of a game is a positive one, which I think nearly 100% of board games are, I am 100% supportive of anything being explored. And having more games of different themes and ideas does make the space more welcoming to more people, since there are more options now for them to explore. And I can't think of anything more that I'd like to see in the board game hobby than allowing more people to find enjoyment and share in the community that we have. But before I hijack this with my social commentary, let's get to the giveaway. And to whoever on their team submitted the giveaway form, I appreciate your sense of humor. It just was unexpected and made me laugh, because this giveaway is for 1 copy of the game plus 1 copy of the game and a tote bag. So it sounds like whoever wins this will not only get a copy for themselves, but also a copy they could potentially give to one of their friends. And to enter this giveaway, just leave a comment down below with the hashtag library and let us know a female, historic, or fictional character that you might look up to. For myself, being a bit of a nerd, there's actually quite a lot of female influence in the history of computer science that I was totally thankful for, and I was going to pull from that. But I decided to pick someone who had a little bit more of a tangible impact on my life and helped me understand a lot of things that I'm interested in that I had a lot of time struggling with before I found out about her. And this is actually a fellow YouTuber that I've been following long before I ever even thought about making videos. I think she's probably one of the first 10 YouTube channels that I subscribed to in my life ever. And she's obviously super passionate about math, because she makes these incredible videos with these little narrations and drawings. And she explains these super complex algorithms and theories in a way that I can actually understand. And I'm really happy to be able to share this in one of my videos and that it came up, because I think a lot of you out there probably share my same curiosity and that tiny bit of geekiness. And I highly recommend checking out any of her videos, because they're all super interesting and they will truly make you appreciate the complexities of math. And not that she needs any help from little old me, but I'm happy to share her channel any way that I can. So definitely check it out and subscribe if you like what she's doing over there. This might sound unexpected, but understanding different concepts in science and math have had a profound impact on the way that I view the world and the way that I treat people and the way that I hold people responsible to their actions. And understanding the mysteries of quantum physics and randomness has probably had the biggest role to play in that. I'm not guaranteeing the same experience or that this is going to change your life, but there is a lot of great content here regardless. And if you want to check out her channel, I'll leave a link to that right up here. And the next giveaway we have is for a pledge for the Real Thing RPG, and this is a role-playing game based on the music by the band Faith No More, more specifically their album with the same name as this campaign, The Real Thing. And this is going to explore some gritty and grungy themes from the 90s, but it's going to be heavily inspired by the music of that album, and this is going to offer a few one-shot scenarios for players to explore. So if you are a fan of dark, gritty RPGs, or maybe you're just a fan of the band Faith No More, I think this is going to offer a lot for you to get excited about. And if that name isn't ringing any bells for you, I'm sure you've probably still heard of a few of their songs. They have quite a lot of popular ones. I think the most notable being Epic, which you can check out on Spotify or on YouTube. But this giveaway is going to be for the limited edition print version of the game. And to enter this giveaway, I'm going to be doing something a little bit different. Instead of leaving a comment on this video, go ahead and check out our Dark and Gritty Discord, which I'll leave a link to in the description below. And all you have to do is check out the giveaways channel and click the little emoji under the post, and that will get you automatically entered into the giveaway. And this will get drawn automatically in the end of 7 days. And if you have the Discord app installed, you will get a notification of it. But other than that, I have all notifications turned off on the Discord, so you won't get spammed with all sorts of notifications unless you've signed up for them. Now let's go ahead and draw the winners from last week's giveaway, and I think this is going to be a really fun drawing because the first one we're going to draw for is Alice in Wordland. And to enter this giveaway, you just had to leave a comment just like all my giveaways, but I'd asked viewers to leave a comment using a word for something that you would find in your sandwich, omitting certain letters, which were B, C, and N. And I also asked viewers to try and pick a word that wasn't already said by someone else. And I've been up at my cottage for the past 7 days, so I'm really excited to see the different words that all of you were able to come up with. And to draw a winner, I use this fancy application here that will randomly draw from the different comments that were left on the video. And all these extra names down here are bonus entries from my Patreon subscribers. If you like this sort of content and you want to help make this a little bit more sustainable for me, that's a great way to show your support. And it also gets you some bonus entries into these giveaways. But let's go ahead and draw those comments and draw a winner. And the winner is M. Schwarz, which I'm probably mispronouncing, so I apologize in advance. And he says that he would put some sausage on his sandwich, maybe a vegan one. That is an excellent choice, and you did not use any of those letters. And someone else actually did use the same word sausage, but they're both 6 days ago, and I don't have a time, so I don't know which one was first. But if you read the comments, they both have some excellent arguments to why their words are valid, and they may have actually just been talking about two different sausages anyway. Not what you think, get your mind out of the gutter. So congratulations, just reach out to me at adam@shelfclutter.com and we'll get that pledge all sorted out. And the next giveaway we had was for Motor City, and to draw a winner, I'm going to do the exact same thing. So let's grab those comments and draw a winner. And the winner is Clint Cabrera, which is a name I've seen recently, so really impressive work there winning these random draws. I'll reach out to you and let you know that you won yourself yet another pledge, this time for Motor City. And that's all I have for you this week. I'm actually filming this one a little bit later, so this is going to be going up a bit later, so I apologize for that in advance, except not really in advance because you're going to be seeing this later than usual, so really I'm telling you late. Yeah, that probably doesn't make sense, but until next time, keep that shelf cluttered and the table full.